Relief. Chapter 1. James's point of view. 8 months earlier. It's hard to pinpoint when this all started. After a while, everything in your life becomes a blur of chaos and pure craziness. At least for me, it kind of feels like that. For those of you that don't know me, let me introduce myself. I'm James Michael, and most people probably recognize me as the frontman of the rock group 6am. Before that, however, I was mainly working behind the scenes as a songwriter and producer, not only my music, but other people's music. I wasn't always comfortable being in the spotlight. In fact, that's never what I actually wanted. I fell in love with everything that happened behind the scenes, that thinking about being out there in the front actually made me nervous. It was out of my comfort zone. Let's just say the first few shows I did with 6am were, to put it lightly, rough. I wasn't hitting the right notes, and I couldn't even talk to an audience, for God's sake. I'll never forget, the first show we did for Crew Fest was in Florida, and the weather was so humid. My hair was sticking to my face, and it wasn't staying right. So because I couldn't think of anything to say to the audience, I started rambling about how the weather was fucking my hair up, and how I wish I knew all the girls' secrets to keeping their hair intact. Oh man, I'm cringing as I think about it. Nikki and DJ must have been so embarrassed. But practice makes perfect, right? I think I got the whole lead singer in the spotlight thing down pat now. Speaking of perfect, I almost forgot to mention, I can be somewhat of a perfectionist. If you ask Nikki and DJ, they'll tell you that I had such a hard time transitioning from being a producer back in the studio to being out in the open on stage. See, when you're producing, you have all the control. You have control over every little thing that happens. Every little sound you change up in the song, every little beat or tempo. It's all in your hands, it's yours to create, and you get to decide how the song is going to end up. When you record your vocals, you can do as many takes as you need until you get the one that you feel sounds right. Then you can tweak it even more if you need to. When you're on stage in front of a live audience, you have to let go of some of that control. Actually, a lot of that control is gone. You have to go with the flow and allow yourself to be flexible because you never know what could happen up there. Someone might miss a note, or your microphone might stop working, or your voice cracks. You can't click rewind and go fix it. You just have to deal with it and move forward. I had such a hard time. I remember there were so many times that Nikki and DJ had to sit me down after a show because they just knew that I was beating myself up for something ridiculous like my voice cracking, and they told me that I had to take my producer's hat off. Now, I know a lot of you are probably thinking, what's so bad about being a perfectionist? Doesn't that make you a really hard worker? Don't get me wrong, there is truth to that, but there's always a downside, and I'll admit that. When I'm recording music in the studio, I will not leave that room until I decide that the finished product is flawless. I get completely obsessed with getting every little thing right that I'll start to neglect other things in order for that to happen. Those other things just happen to include myself. I'm too focused on perfecting my work that nothing else matters anymore. Eating doesn't matter. Drinking doesn't matter unless it's caffeine, because that will keep me up longer so I can work longer. Sleeping doesn't matter. All that matters in those moments is that I make the best music, mix the best albums, and record my best vocals. That actually brings me to another point, one that I don't bring up much. I suffer from pretty bad bipolar disorder. That's where a lot of that manic productivity of mine comes from, as I like to call it. The higher the mania, the bigger the crash. Like I said, there's almost always a downside to every situation. Depressive episodes are very scary. It's hard to put into words what the experience is like. It's almost like the world just stops spinning. Everything just freezes in time and my mind becomes a blurred fog. It's virtually the only time that I can't get out of bed and have absolutely no motivation to do anything at all. Even the smallest things, like picking a pair of socks off my floor that have been laying there for weeks. The thoughts in my head suddenly switch from, I'm on top of the world, I can do anything, and nobody can stop me from getting this right, to, I'm a worthless piece of crap, you can never do anything right, you're a fucking idiot. What's the point? See, the more intense the mania, the more intense the perfectionism is. And the more perfectionistic I become, the higher the chance of a depressive episode starting because I set my standards way too high. When I don't meet those unrealistic standards, my brain starts spitting self-deprecating, horrible things about myself. Suddenly I become a failure and someone who can't do anything right and will never be able to succeed or accomplish anything. I want to give up and throw in the towel and basically throw everything away that I've ever worked so hard for. It's scary feeling like you have no control. It's terrifying feeling powerless, especially with moods changing so drastically like this. That's when I discovered that there were ways that I could almost muffle those voices in my head. Everyone has their demons, but not all of them are open about them. They do things to numb out or cover them up so they don't have to think about it. A few years back, I had actually quit drinking because I realized that I was using that as a way to run away from everything instead of facing it head on. I decided that since 6 a.m. is going to end up touring soon, I had to really start taking better care of myself, or else there would be no fucking way I would be able to survive being on the road. Of course, this epiphany that I had happened to come during a manic episode. I had decided right then and there, sitting in my studio, that I was going to get myself in shape and nourish myself with healthy, clean foods so I could be the best energized version of myself that I could be when we start touring. Not only that, but I realized that in order to manage my highs and lows, I needed some kind of structure in my day. Besides locking myself in the studio and making music, and exercise routines could be part of that. It was that moment when I found an extensive list of health foods and vigorous workout routines that everything changed. I researched for hours on end, obsessively planning out what I was going to eat each day, which workouts I was going to do, how I was going to fit them in, and how empowered and fucking awesome I was going to feel when I accomplished all that. I will tell you right now, I had no fucking idea that this was going to turn into a full-blown addiction. It started off as a way to get healthy, to make structure for myself so I can manage my bipolar better. It started off as a choice. Now, I feel like I have no choice. Don't get me wrong, it's not always bad. I do think that all of this will benefit me when we do start touring, because I already noticed that I'm way more energized. It could be mind over matter, but I don't really give a shit. I feel good. I feel accomplished when I complete a workout or when I stick to my rigid plans. What's a little fucked up is that I noticed that during depressive episodes, when I compulsively get my ass up and work out, I actually feel a sort of rush. I feel surges of adrenaline and I almost forget that I was feeling so bad because it mimics feelings of slight euphoria that are similar to when I'm at a high point. If I had to choose, I would always rather be manic because it tricks me into feeling like I'm actually great, as opposed to depression where I'm flooded with self-hate, worthlessness, and sometimes even suicidal thoughts. So of course, once I discovered that exercising and being strict with what I ate gave me such positive feelings, I had no intentions of stopping. In a way, it almost feels like when I eat less, exercise more, or only allow myself to eat specific things, I can actually control something. I can't control my bipolar disorder and the terrifying highs and lows, but I can control what I put in my body and what I do to my body. And as I'm controlling those things, at the same time, my mood swings are being controlled too, and I feel like I can function when I'm having depressive episodes. See, when you're in the entertainment industry, it doesn't matter how you feel or what's going on personally for you. You still have to show up and do performances or speak at interviews or go to press conferences or record signings and all that shit. You can't just not show up. Yes, I'm a producer and I'm a performer because I love it, but it's also my job. I have to find a way to function normally in order to go out there and present myself. So trust me, if you have bipolar disorder or some other form of mental illness, you want to find a way to keep it under control so you can appear functional and normal to your audience. This is definitely going to benefit me on tour, but the only problem is that sometimes I start to wonder if it's becoming all-consuming. I wake up and the first thing I think about is working out. The second thing I think about is what I'm going to eat, how I'm going to eat it, and when I'm going to eat it. If I'm not in the studio, I'm working out. If I'm not working out, I'm vigorously planning out my meals for the day. If I'm not doing that, then I'm out at the grocery store buying the specific things on my list. Because, yes, there are specific things. My brain gave me a whole new set of rules that I have to follow in order to live my life. Number 1, work out first thing in the morning every single day, no matter what. It doesn't matter if you're tired, sick, or lacking motivation. You do it. Number 2, eat things at certain times of the day. Breakfast 30 minutes after working out. Lunch 3 hours after that. Dinner 4 hours after that. You can't eat anything after dinner because that's the last meal of the day. Number 3, your main components of meals should be vegetables and protein. Carbs are a no-no unless they're complex, high fiber, or take a lot for your body to digest. Protein prevents you from losing muscle and gaining fat, which will help me for when I have to be super active on tour, and the vegetables provide all those micronutrients that your body needs to function. Number 4, drink a lot of caffeine. Not only does it give you energy, but it can also work as an appetite suppressant. It also raises metabolism, makes you shit, and can fuel productivity sessions because it'll keep you alert and focused. I could go on forever, but you probably already think I'm a complete nut, so let's just leave it at that. It's just become so rigid. It's kind of annoying. It feels compulsive, but I keep saying if it helps give me structure and stabilizes my moods, then I have to keep doing it because, well, my job means the world to me, and I won't do anything that could risk me ruining that or even losing it. My only hope is that I can keep everything at bay when I'm around DJ and Nikki. They won't end up suspecting anything, will they?